Welcome to League Night, everybody. We have made it to USDGC week. All the major this is the last major is how I should put it. I'm joined tonight by Statmando Dion Arlen, everybody.
Hey, Matt, I'm on cold medicine, so expect some hot takes tonight.
Ooh, that's interesting. We'll see what we get from you. Josh Graham also joins us from his remote location in New Hampshire. How's it going, Josh?
It's going great. And Dion, I've had some of my best shows when I've been on meds, so I'm looking forward to it.
Interesting. Both of you interesting takes. We've been doing this for a while. I'm excited to see how it goes. But yes, United States Disc Golf Championship week is here, and we are previewing what we want to talk about, and we think what you're going to be interested in. Let's get right into it. Starting out first, talking about previous winners. We feel like this is going to build the foundation for our conversation tonight. We've had 12 different winners across. This will be the 23rd iteration of this event. I say iteration, well, it's kind of like we're going to talk about it later. It's changed quite a few times. We've had 4 repeat winners. So 12 different winners, 4 repeat winners. That is Paul McBeth, Will Schustrick, Barry Schultz, and Ken Climo. Ken Climo notably with the most of 5, and the other 3 tied with 3 wins each, and then a handful of other single winners. Guys, go ahead and point out some of your favorites. This is a notable event. We've had some unique winners and unique situations. Tell me who you're thinking of.
Well, so I'll jump in. I'm sure Dion has something as well. Matt, not necessarily starting favorites per se, but this event truly is unique. First of all, you said 23 years. Usually for most stat reasons, we're probably only counting 22 years. We kind of exclude 2011 when they did this weird performance flight exclusive. Congrats to that winner. But what's interesting is I find, so over the 22 years in my analysis, only 29 players have ever podiumed here. There's 66 spots, right? If you say 22 events times, 3 podium spots, only 29 players. So top performers come to play. 15 players have podiumed more than once in their career, right? And if we just look at even just the last 10 years, this is interesting to me. There's 7 total winners. McBeth won 3 of them. Schustrick won 2 of them. And then there were 5 others. We know many of the names, Dickerson, Heimberg. Oh, no, not Heimberg. He tried really close. Dickerson, Coling, Sexton, and so on.
Conrad.
Yes, thank you. I'm pulling a blank. Conrad. Talking about how memorable it is, and then I can't remember.
Yeah, exactly.
And I know you asked for winners. This whole segment's winners, but let me just say something else since we're kind of talking about, I raised the podium finishes, even though first place is probably the one that really matters. Do you know who has tied the second most podium finishes ever?
Ever, I'm not sure. Josh Anthon has to be pretty high, but
yeah, I mean, so multiple podium finishes. He is on the list, but it is Ricky Wysocki. And of course, there's a notable asterisk there because he has not finished first. But there's always a story of how Ricky's performed here, but he has the second most finishes on the podium ahead of Paul McBeth. So just some interesting things when we talk about top performers over the years at this event. I know I didn't throw many new names in the mix. Obviously, you've got some of the classics. You already mentioned the repeat winners.
And I'm going to throw this over to Dion. It's going to be a little trivia for you, Statmando. Who is the only winner who did not know they won when they tapped in their last putt?
Oh, that's an easy answer. Thanks for setting me up with that softball. We're talking about our boy, Big Jeremy Coling. A few years back, 2016, the fourth and final round of the event was canceled due to the hurricane conditions that South Carolina was experiencing. So after that announcement was made, it became clear then that Jeremy was a winner.
Okay, and before we move on, I would like to give a shout out to both Felberg in 2005 as well as Nate Doss in 2008. And I bring up Nate Doss because he is a decorated world champion that doesn't often get the credit for also being a U.S. champion. What a player Nate Doss was. Kudos to him. Nate Sexton 2017, James Conrad 2019, Chris Dickerson in 2020, and of course last year's playoff win with Paul McBeth going against Kyle Klein into a playoff in exciting, dramatic fashion. By the way, do you remember, before we move out of here, Paul McBeth goes into hole 18, throws his approach shot, and he hits that penalty, that OB stake that's in the ground, and it kicks him safe. Do you remember that? what a moment that was. It could have went either way. It wasn't Umbrella Gate, but it was definitely OB Steak Gate. So it kept him in. He was able to secure the opportunity to go in the playoff and then wins against Kyle Klein.
I don't
Any
know,
other
Matt.
comments you have on winners?
Any chance Paul hit that steak on purpose? Do you think that was intentional?
That's the play, using the backcourt.
Yeah.
Well,
Just joking, but yeah.
I'll segue off something that you said, Josh, which is bringing up Ricky. He hasn't won a major since 2017, so he's in a drought, you could say, although the case could be made, as we'll talk about later, that he is a favorite for Player of the Year. Him winning this major would certainly be a declarative statement on that thought, the Player of the Year thought. But I wanted to put it into context what it means to have not won USDGC and be the type of player that Ricky is. This is the event throughout the history of its time on the tour and one of the premier events that our sport can provide that meant the most to win to all the players. The world title was extremely valuable because you'd get a signature disc and you'd get a lot of promotion. But if you were to ask the players which title means more, it was USDGC, because this was the stiffest competition on the hardest course at the most premier event that the sport had to offer. So winning this one means the most. So to hear that he has that many podium finishes and not a wins, for sure that's something that he'll be making, trying to change this week.
Okay.
Yeah, and it's interesting because he hasn't performed badly is really my point for raising that. I mean, he's like, I think 3 seconds and 3/3, right? Like that is right up there with some of the best. The problem is none of them finished in first, which is why when we rattle off names like Matt did, obviously Climo, and then Schultz, Schusterich, and Macbeth, there are a couple other players who are very close to that discussion. But Wysocki's really the only one who's like actually almost in the same arena, but not because of that. And so, we'll talk a little bit later about maybe who we have to watch for, but you got to still include his name in it. And then of course you have other winners, right? Like it's interesting to me. You've got Nico Lacastro, who by the way has podiumed 4 times in his career, right? He has always performed well. Obviously we won't see him this year for other reasons, but he has a win, right? And that's the difference. When you get the win, you kind of, you put your name on the legacy of USDGC, and a pretty big deal. And then somebody like Schusterich, we already mentioned his name, but he's finished on the podium 3 times and every time was first, which is pretty interesting. Now he has other, times he's been there that he didn't finish on the podium. But the point is when he was on, like he didn't take runner up. So, there's a lot of fun history here at the event, which I know we'll talk more about.
There we go. So we've heard a little bit about previous winners. We've even heard some of the podium winners. We're going to talk about some notable moments. And when I think of notable moments in history for the United States disc golf champion, by the way, that name, we should change it to an acronym, USDGC, which they did. It's a mouthful. The US champions. I tend to find myself thinking of drama-filled and what is probably considered a negative moment for the player. But for the fans, it really ramps up the experience and excitement seeing maybe their favorite player have a chance. But it also could be your player who's also having these notable moments that were negative as well. There's positive. I'm going to start with a few of the negative ones. Eagle McMahon punching his throwing hand into the ground in frustration and breaking it during the United States Disc Golf Championship. Johnny McRae going into hole 17 of the final round with a 4-stroke lead. Throws out of bounds 3 times on the island green. He pretty much looks up to the heavens and he says, "I still love you, Lord. You've never failed me. You're good to me." And then he threw his shot and was able to get it to stick. But he gave up the opportunity to win and was not able to pull off the win. And then finally, I mentioned it earlier, Calvin Heimberg in 2020 with the lead and the chance to go into 18 and win it, hits his putt into the top band of 17's basket. And I remember watching stunned as the disc stood up on its edge and slow as you could ever believe, wobbled to out of bounds in the water. Those are a few of the notable moments that stand out to me in the negative side of it. What are some moments that stand out to each of you? Dion?
Yeah, so I'll paint this picture as somebody who's played in this event. I went in 2009 and 2010, and so I'll just characterize this segment with personal experiences and things that stood out to me as a participant in the event. For me, in that year, 2009, it was the first time I'd been to an event as a disc golfer that made me feel like a professional athlete. And we are spoiled, I would say, by the Pro Tour in that we've progressed so far in our game that we have premier events happening 20 times a year across our schedule. But not that long ago, there was only one, and it was USDGC. So this is forever the type of event that can paint the picture of a legacy for the sport.
Actually, that's a great perspective. I had the opportunity to interview Ricky this week, and Ricky Wysocki said in his mind, the level that these elite events have reached at the Disc Golf Pro Tour have made it so that even the majors now do not stand and separate themselves as much, at least in his perspective. And I think there's a point to be made there that we're getting the quality of events that the championships, the majors used to stand out with. United States Disc Golf Championship has a history and a prestige that a lot of people talk about as being greater than the World Championships. But I do think it was a great point you brought up. Josh, what are some moments that stand out to you?
Yeah, so there, I mean, you mentioned some of the, I'll call them sad moments, right, for those players. There's another one that's kind of like on the line. It probably is sad as well, but go way back, which means like, I don't think I was actively engaged as much, but Barry Schultz, I've since known, right? A 10-hole playoff with Ken Climo, but on the 9th playoff hole, he almost threw an ace. And so that almost has got to be like that feeling of like, I was just so incredibly close. But then coming more modern, I can't help but remember seeing Nico, of course, throw the albatross. But just as iconic was not the throw itself, but was Nico's reaction, which is often the case. Like him or love him, the reactions are part of what you get with Nico. And of course, running and then like sideways jumping off a tree. That is just, it's a fun moment. And then I'm going to jump right ahead to a moment that is already iconic. You see it in advertisements, you see it in clips, you see it whatever, but was just last year, which is Paul's reaction after his putt for the win in playoffs. But the whole context of that moment is easy to also forget, which remember just in the prior holes, all the confusion with UDisc. And the live scoring, which has become such an important part for the players. So that kind of whole stretch from like 17 to 18 to the playoff hole, I think was a weird moment for both Paul and Kyle Klein. But then we've seen Paul get excited, plenty of fist pumps, like, that's part of who he is. But it seemed like there was something unique about getting that off his chest, the way he had lost Worlds previously that year. And so that's a moment, even though it probably does have some recency bias, I think there's a good chance that goes down in history as one of those moments to remember.
Josh, if I recall, we have to go back probably at least 10 or 12 or 15 years ago. You threw a shot that I was in a group of disc golfers with, and you hit all the chains and fell out. What did that feel like? You recalled that Barry Schultz did that.
I mean,
but
like,
you've had a few moments, maybe not for the title.
Yeah, exactly. Well, to me, right, that was probably as big as it would have ever gotten. But yeah, I mean, I can't imagine, right? Because also, it's not just chaining out, but it was like the 9th playoff hole.
Yeah.
Right? I mean, that is grueling. You've played another half a round against the best in the sport and just not being able to pull it off in that fashion. Now, clearly, Barry's won 3 others, so he is also one of the best in the sport. But yeah, there's plenty of other memories. I mean, look at the Pro Tour's social media this week. They've been pumping out awesome video clips of other incredible throw-ins. Some people have just done amazing, rollers and incredible feats because I think everybody out here is pushing as hard as they can. It's obviously the best of the best. It's a qualifier event. So, everybody who's there has earned it in some form or fashion. And it's just littered with great moments. So.
Yeah, absolutely. And we're going to look forward to more moments. I mean, we could talk about what those are going to be, and we're going to get to that when we talk about what we should look for at this iteration of it. I will say Barry Schultz, now that we've brought him up a few times, is competing this year. I do not know how many times that is for him, but he is technically competing for the 4th U.S. championship for himself, which would outdo Paul. Now, if he pulls it off, I think we have a whole nother show to do just on Barry Schultz, but that would be an exciting thing for sure. All right, Winthrop Gold. This is the course that is found at the Winthrop University location. It has been hosted here since its inception. You see beautiful grass fairways and OB water, beautiful shots over the water, some of the holes forcing to play over the water. What do you think about the fact that we are playing on a private property? However, it is at a venue that is not built for disc golf. It is Winthrop University. Any feelings on that, Josh?
Yeah, it's interesting. I'm probably going to take this. Well, I'll give a comment on what you said and then take it a little bit in a different direction, because to me, this is actually the whole point. So, first of all, private means, we've talked about that here before, a lot more direct control, but it's private on a university course, right? So obviously they're working closely with the actual university to determine what they can and can't do, right? And there are still some limitations, albeit we see them do a lot of different unique things. But we also see them working around the property, including parking lots and stadiums, right? And other kind of property, right, considerations. Fences, you see houses in the background. Not saying any of those things are bad, but I think it is unique. We've recently seen Innova sign a multi-year contract to stay there, so I expect we'll see it for a while. But here's really my comment, aside from the obvious facts of what the course is. The fact that they continue to revisit the same venue, albeit with plenty of course changes, but for the last 23 years, in and of itself is what actually lends the value. That is why it has picked up prestige. And sure, I think there have been some unique things about the course that people appreciated. It was always intended to challenge the best in the game and to kind of push the envelope. But think about the segment we just came off of talking about notable memories. Here's the thing. Every disc golf tournament this year, past years, and even especially the other majors, they have awesome things happen in them. There's memories down the line. You could create a list of all those events. But when you continue to build familiarity along with prestige, meaning running the event well so it's well respected, it starts to mean something more. Matt, that's why we can say Nico's hole 13 albatross, and anybody who follows the sport remembers it and knows what it looks like, right? When you talk about the triple Mandel hole, people know what it looks like. Hole 17, they know what it looks like, and they remember the events that have actually happened there. And so I think that is why we love Winthrop Gold. Course design's probably part of it. Obviously, the fact that it's a major is part of it. But there's a lesson to be learned here. It's a simple fact that I can place what I see this coming weekend, right? So when we watch the 4 rounds, I can place it in the context of past memories and vice versa. And even with changes, there's enough familiarity to do that. And we should acknowledge, in my opinion, that's a big deal, right? USDGC is the classic case in point here. Now, I could also argue, is the future to stay at Winthrop University and Winthrop Gold? But this is why there is so much weight and recognition, because it's familiar. We've been here before, and we're going to continue to come back for at least several more years.
Yeah, hole number 1, you hear the players announced in their representation. And also you think of hole 17. We say hole 17, but how about the walk from hole 16 to 17? These are memories, as you said, Josh, that stand out specifically because of Winthrop Gold. What are your feelings, Dion?
Yeah, Josh is exactly right. Everything about this course is iconic because it has the length of time to build up that memory and data set, right? Some of the changes that they make on the course that we'll talk about later, or holes that we've seen come and go throughout the design over time, none of those really stick in our head. They might make an impression on us because they're the exception, but the things that are the rule on this course are the things that dominate our consciousness and our perception around this event. So in terms of what it was like to be a player playing this event, it's unparalleled, and stepping up onto those holes that you've been watching on TV for the number of years it's been on TV and then getting to throw them, that's an incredible experience. I'll take the long perspective from a strategy position to Josh's comments. If you can't guarantee that you're always going to be able to do the event at Winthrop, then I think it's worth pulling the trigger sooner rather than later, so that you can have time to build the legacy on whatever the next venue is for this event. So if you can't guarantee it's going to be a long-term deal, then I think you need to start looking for options if you're the host of these events.
Yeah, and then they're gonna look back and say, maybe I should have started 5 years earlier. Even, you're right. So I mean, if it's the time, it's the time. Josh, I cut you off. What do you have?
No, that's fine, because I was going to agree, and I was going to say that actually is the point. Is there is so much incredible value at staying at one place that if you don't secure that indefinitely for the future, you're at risk of losing that prestige. You just are. Now, obviously, the name itself is going to carry the history. But yeah, the point is sometimes you have to make that transition. I don't know if I'm close enough to say whether they have to, because here's the truth. If you can stay at Winthrop and continue to figure out a way to grow with the sport and do it for another 20 years, you could look back and say you made it work. If you were to ask me whether I think you can make that work for another 20 years with the growth trajectory, I think you're hard pressed. And again, I'm on the outside, I'm not on the inside, but I feel it could be a better investment, literally, both monetarily and in the sport and the prestige of the event. Yeah, to find a place where you can continue to build on the legacy. Sure, you have to hit reset in some cases, but right, the next 20 years, all the people joining our sport will look back, right, and they won't remember where the event was 40 years ago, but you can start to rebuild that legacy. Some interesting things for the event owners to figure out and run, and make these decisions. But that's what I would do. I'd go build the most prestigious, premier course and invest in that as the U.S. Disc Golf Championships. But
all
we will
good
see.
Points. And we know that Innova Champion Disc has a pretty heavy hand in this. Jonathan Poole, the tournament director, on staff with Innova for a long time, as well as Innova in general. And I think that Innova seems to hold a very strong value towards legacy, where things have come from and what that means for the sport. And I don't see them moving, but they are all great points that you have. They should if they need to, but we don't know if that'll ever happen. I would imagine it's not. Let's talk about USDGC, the event itself. Is it a trendsetter? And I ask that question because they often are trying to be innovative with their ideas and their thinking. And every year, about a week before the event, you start seeing social media posts from players and fans alike, either criticizing or praising the changes that they're seeing on the course, often causing some form of controversy or at least drama for all of the podcasts to discuss. Here are a few that we have seen over the past years: wood poles obstructing putts close up, Mandos to the tee pad, ropes defining OB, throwing plus distance OB type shots, the bunker rule, OB hazard areas, the drop spot after 3 attempts on the island green, hole 17, and in fact, the idea of island greens. We saw an iteration of performance flight in 2011, which was not a regular stroke play format. Monday qualifiers, which just happened this week, and the fact that the USDGC loves to tightly control the media. That's often caused some heartburn for people over the years. This year, it will be hosted exclusively on the Disc Golf Network here. Be sure to check it out. Guys, when it comes to being a trendsetter, what do you think sticks and what do you think should leave? Do you have any opinions on this when it comes to USDGC? I guess I should open it up. Dion, what do you think?
Yeah, I actually will sort of take a moment to reinforce the last point, and it's sort of a pro-con conversation about what you do with the course if you're the tournament staff here. They like to experiment. They like to debut these new ideas at the world's largest event, and the biggest criticism against that is, why do it at the biggest event of the year or the most prestigious event of the year? Because they're debuting it at the most prestigious event of the year, these are things that get ingrained within the disc golf consciousness as such, and you start to see them occur throughout other courses and other tournaments throughout the entire disc golf ecosystem. So coming back to our last point, I would say, if you like doing that, if you like playing with the course, playing with different creative elements and design elements, that is another tick in the box of develop your own private course where you have unlimited restrictions other than budget to go do those things. So if we're going to continue to see that trend at Winthrop, there are already some limitations put in place because it's not their property. So just revisiting that thought as one more check the box for the argument to make it your own course so you can do a lot of fun things and delight and frustrate the disc golf community as a whole for years to come.
Okay, before I move over to Josh, I do want to bring up the fact that I mentioned all these innovative ideas, some of them good, some of them bad. That is how things progress. You need innovators. You need, and some may hate me for this, the Steve Jobs of the world. You also need the Steve Dodges of the world, too. That's kind of a fun way to say that. And I will put this out there, though. Notably today, Colton Montgomery of Discmania tried to play into the Monday qualifier and did not qualify. However, he took to social media after saying, this event used to feel prestigious to me, but just feels like a gimmick nowadays. Some players, maybe not many, but there's the argument that fans are seeing this and now a player speaking up that it feels a little bit gimmicky. Josh, do you see these things as trend setting? Do you see them as innovation, or do you see them as gimmicks?
Well, can they be a little of all three? Is that possible? Because here's what I actually think. There are some things they implement that the actual implementation themselves maybe feels like it's lended more towards a gimmick, but the philosophy behind what they've done actually ends up setting a trend. So I'll pick an example: mozzarella sticks. In and of itself, lots of dispute. Obviously, even the fact it has the funny nickname.
I was
Like
just about
maybe,
to say, is there
yeah,
actually a dispute about good mozzarella sticks? But you're talking about the posts that are around the baskets. Gotcha.
Exactly. So you've got these wooden posts, but here's what's unique. I think there is innovation in thinking about how can we be more creative in our course design to think about how we actually shape greens in the sport of disc golf, because right in kind of the heritage of traditional golf played right with a ball and clubs, the greens are much more dynamic because of the essence of the sport. And so I think that is like an excellent conversation. How can we actually design it? Whether or not you want to stick wooden posts up, right? The same thing with hazards, stroke and distance, unique mandos, island holes, other things that were listed. I think whether or not you love their actual execution or implementation, there's almost no question that the things that they're doing are then trickling out to the broader sport and changing some things that are more commonly implemented and maybe refined upon. And that's just a fine thing. You don't have to nail the execution when you're innovating on step one, right? Then everybody can kind of take that and iterate on it. Matt, some other things on the list, I think, in my opinion, paying big for wins, right? Obviously, the Pro Tour is paying quite large for their wins now. We just saw kind of an all new record, projected payout for the championship event. But I think, USDGC has tried to prove that over the years, and they aren't necessarily the biggest at this point, but in their history, kind of making some splashes there through some of the years. And you already mentioned media. That's another thing. Not everybody was thrilled the way they've managed media. Again, you may not love their actual execution, but the philosophy behind it, I think, has cascaded into the rest of the industry. And there are people, right? Things are much more private. I understand not everybody likes it, but the point is I think USDGC willingness to try things does put ripples out there, and that doesn't have to be exclusive to them, but I think they're the ones who have done it the most.
High quality comes to my mind. I have actually never had the privilege of walking onto the grounds of Winthrop University to see Winthrop Gold or the competition, but the players are often echoing each other, saying the quality and the prestiginess. I do know and see photos of what it's like as far as players getting treated well. I've seen the player, I'll call it the hangout. It's the after your round is done, a place for you to be where you can relax, couches under tents and TVs to watch the live event as it's happening. The quality and the prestige is very high with this. Let's talk about quickly into this next segment here, notable changes for 2022. We always see hole changes. We just talked about some of them, but some that stand out here, if you want to go look it up and check out the caddy guides or what to expect as you're viewing the event. Hole 2 was shortened to become a nice par 3. Hole 3 and 4 are now combined. You may recognize hole 3. You're throwing from a slightly elevated position out of a gap of trees. That is no longer an easy par 3. It is now changed to a par 4. Hole 4, you'll recognize because in 2019, this caused controversy, this new hole. It was referred to as the gauntlet hole, a straight row of trees on both sides of the fairway that you got to really throw really accurately to get up there for your birdie. And then hole 13 is being turned into an 818-foot par 4. And this hole will stand out to you again because of the reference to Nico Lacastro's Albatross. It is now being taken off of that center island of the parking area and moved back onto, I say back onto as if it's been there before, but really into a new location, not in that island green. Those are the notable changes that stand out to me. Anything that I missed, guys?
Probably the biggest change of the course this year, besides those specific hole configurations, is the aesthetic of the course itself. So we're seeing more long grass and boulders delineating bunkers and OB, which is a fantastic addition in my mind to make better aesthetics, beautify the course, make it more pleasing to the eye, and easier for the players shooting these shots, long 400, 500-foot shots into fairways where the inbounds, out of bounds areas are denoted by more obvious obstructions.
Great point and observation there. Josh, anything else?
Nothing about hole design. So 2 other kind of random comments. No Eagle McMahon. He's withdrawn, obviously still recovering from injury, but he is one of our other major winners this year. And there was thought he may show up, but he is not. And then another totally unrelated comment about this year. I already mentioned this in passing, but you can watch live on DGN exclusive this year, and there's no additional paywall. So I mention these things because these are things that have caused kind of some drama, and I don't think as actual controversy, but certainly discussion in the past. So just worth noting a few other things as we get ready in the next 2 days for this to kick off.
Interesting conversations to be had. You may think I have an inside scoop on some of what happens here, but I'm curious to know if DGN had to dish out the money there to secure that, or if they offered the value of live production for maybe a discounted rate. There's a lot that probably happens there, but I do think that was a very positive move. So you can definitely check that out here with your subscription on the Disc Golf Network. Even signing up for the full year or month would be well worth it just for this event. All right, season storylines. You mentioned Eagle's not here. He is not part of the storyline for this event or really the year in general. Let's talk about it. What happens if Ricky Wysocki wins, Paul McBeth, Simon Lizotte, or even Chris Dickerson? If one of them win, doesn't that set the tone for player of the year? What are your thoughts on that, Dion?
Yeah, we've seen such incredible performances by this handful of guys throughout the year that, to me, the player of the year race is completely wide open. We've talked about this on this show. I've seen it on other shows as well. It really comes down to these last 2 big events. USDGC is the final major, and of course the Tour Championships. The fact that this is not sure how I would characterize it. If this is more prestigious, or just because it has a bigger legacy, or it's because it's categorized as a major, while the Pro Tour finale will probably pay out more. I don't know how you sort those, which one's bigger or more weighty in the conversation, but in my mind, I would say USDGC carries more weight into the conversation as it's the prestigious major of our sport. So,
okay, I'm going to put you on the spot here. If none of these players that I mentioned pull off a win, who's the player of the year so far? And does it change based off of their placement?
That is you are going to put me on the spot there. I try to skirt around the issues and be abstract as much as possible, but I will concretely say that Paul would be my pick for player of the year, followed very closely by Ricky. That's how I would put it.
Okay, is that determined in your mind by their placement, or does it not matter? As if neither of them win, it doesn't matter. Do you feel like Ricky's got it?
Oh, Matt, you're making me unpack my whole argument now. So to be fair, this is actually something I plan to dig into quite deeply in the next couple of weeks, right? This is a topic I take seriously, so I hesitate to even share where my mind is at now because of the fact that
Let's wait until after the event. Let's wait until after the event. Stat Mando, you're going to curate what we want to know. Josh, do you have any feelings on any of these players? If Paul wins, I would assume you feel like if any of these players win, they take it down. Maybe not Chris Dickerson, but the fact that he already has a major this year, I mean, it could lend to some conversation.
Yeah, I mean, it would be incredible for Chris to get a second major. That would be a very intriguing headline, but he doesn't win player of the year in my book. He's underperformed quite significantly for the rest of the year. And,
so close at Smuggler's Notch, though. I mean, GMC, if he had taken that down, the storyline would change, right?
That's true. One of the few he was close at, right? And some of the others really like way down the leaderboard for what you might expect from Chris, which, by the way, suggests that I do count more than just wins. So this is my point, right? Looking at where you actually like the strength of the full year, wins being heavily weighted is the most important consideration, which does say that somebody like Paul, if he gets a second major and then also his Waco win, and then you look at his overall average performance, I think he makes a very strong case. And if Paul wins USDGC and performs anywhere, decent at the Pro Tour Championship, he probably gets it. But it's so neck and neck that, to me, Matt, it does matter what happens down the leaderboard. If neither Paul or Ricky win, I'll probably look closely to see who outperforms each other. But Ricky would have the advantage in that case because of how he's performed over the year. So it is that close to me, and maybe it's a cop-out, but that just shows how close it is. And of course, Simon Lizotte with 4 wins, but then underperforming at a lot of the other in-between events. But if he comes out and wins his 5th win and it's a major when he has a history of underperforming at majors, then he easily takes it. So those are the 3 names in my mind. But Ricky has the advantage. in my opinion.
Okay. I would say for the fans that are watching, expect to see some not notable names that you maybe are unfamiliar with. That's what I'm looking for. Unfamiliar names finding their way onto the lead card. This is a 4-round event, and you're going to see players showing up that you may not know. And that has been a staple here, it seems like, at USDGC. Also, again, I will just put out there, these are 2 small storylines besides Player of the Year. Again, Paul McBeth going for his 4th, which would put him only 1 behind Ken Climo as far as U.S. titles go. All right, let's get into our top 5 to watch for. We'll make this quick. We want to know what are your top 5. I'm going to give you 2 of mine. You can give me 2 of yours, and we'll go until our lists are taken up here. I'm saying Calvin Heimberg. He's in it to win it. He's definitely in my top 5. And I know we just spoke about the fact that Chris Dickerson seems to have underperformed a fair amount, but he does seem to show up at majors, and he has done it before at this event. So Chris Dickerson and Calvin Heimberg are my top 5. Who do you got, Dion?
Yeah, so I'm going to say Gannon Buhr as my first player to keep an eye out for the reason, Josh, that you were describing. As we were talking about that set of players a moment ago that have a name in the hat for Player of the Year, Gannon's name is not in that list only because he doesn't have that big win. But if you were to look at his average performance, average finish on the Pro Tour, he has the lowest average finish of anyone on the Pro Tour, followed very shortly by Paul McBeth. So if he wins, then I think that there's something to be said about the remarkable season that he's been having as well. The other name that I have in my list is Nate Sexton. Of course, his breakout major win in 2017. Good friend of mine, always rooting for success for him. And this is a course that he knows how to shred. It is about landing zones at Winthrop University, and I think Nate might be one of the best landing zone players of all time.
All right, give us the bottom stamped Glow Sexton Firebirds. We want it again. Josh, who's in your top 5?
All right, so I'm going to go right to the top of an obvious list. I mean, obviously, I do have names further down here, but I'm going to say Paul McBeth and Ricky Wysocki. And maybe this is wishful thinking, but I would love to see a true duel again. Every once in a while, we get this. If we were to see a first and second place battle, just given the season, the nature of the comments, the debate about, winning the point series versus winning a major. I mean, there's just so much at stake for both of them. And, I think they probably love each other as competitors, but they probably also hate each other from a competitive standpoint, not personally, right? But they both would love to take this down. And as a spectator and a fan, it would be incredible to see them going into round 4, neck and neck, running away with it. So they're on my list to watch for because I think they've performed well here, and I would expect them to do it again.
All right, we've talked about the top 4 that I've had in my list. I'm going to throw out just a few maybe dark horses, if we can call them that. Joel Freeman, Corey Ellis, Anthony Barella usually shows up with a good round or 2. If he can pull off 4, he's in it to win it. Kyle Klein, I think I mentioned. Jeremy Koling, he could do it. Dark horse, maybe. You already mentioned Sexton and then Matt Oram. Anybody that we didn't get to, guys, in your list?
As a contender, I think Aaron Gossage has a case to be made.
Wow.
He could very similar to the Emporia course, he can throw hyzers to attack this course with both sides. Distance is not a limitation. So if the putter's on for Aaron, I think he's going to perform really well. And then a big, pick for Chandler Fry, Scott Withers, some buddies of mine who I hope they do well out there. So watch them, cheer them on for me.
Josh, did we miss anyone from your list?
Just add Drew Gibson. I don't know if I actually expect him to be at the top, but I mean, he's had some incredible rounds here in the past, and you never know.
Okay, moving over into, I don't know if we can call it the companion event yet, but the ThrowPink Women's Disc Golf Championship. Now, this is an interesting event. It technically had its original start last year, but if you go back to 2020, United States Disc Golf Championship, due to the pandemic, offered to hold what was called the Women's National Championship. So we also see out there, and I want to be clear, you see during the year, as we did this year in Madison, Wisconsin, Haley King took down the United States Women's Disc Golf Championship, which is really the companion tournament to the United States Disc Golf Championship. However, you see this event, ThrowPink, starting last year, and this is its second iteration this year, the ThrowPink Women's Disc Golf Championship. This title is sought after in a way that sometimes majors are, because Josh, you've brought it up many times on this show. The field matters. The way that the players think about this event matters. What do you think about the history of this event and where we're at and where does it go? What does this mean for the winners? I'm going to open it up to you, Josh.
Yeah, so first of all, I'm going to acknowledge actually in our live chat and currently in the YouTube stream, 52% of our viewers say that they do not feel like it feels like a major championship, but that means nearly half do. So the jury is out on even kind of how the fans view this. I think from a player standpoint, it probably feels a lot like a major, but I think they would acknowledge it's weird because it's not really a major or even an elite series event, right? And so why does it feel like a major? Its prestige is inherited a bit because of two reasons. Matt, you've kind of acknowledged it. It runs alongside USDGC on the same course. And, the other reason is because of the prestige and the way they run the event, right? It's run and it feels like a top tier major. But if you're a player, it's a little frustrating. It doesn't show up in stats, right? As a player, you feel like it should be worth that much, but it's probably frustrating that all the actual accolades don't really follow suit, even in interviews, right? You've got media asking you, do you feel like it's a major? The fact that that question's even there probably immediately erodes the actual accomplishment to some extent. And it's frustrating because even if this does switch over to a major at some point, which may or may not even be an option, but let's say if it does, and you won some of these early iterations, you're going to be proud of that, but you're going to be frustrated because you kind of won it too early because you don't get a big capital M next to your name. So it's a weird spot. We can give credit on the big win, and I'll probably consider it when I think about things like player of the year. But in the long-term history, I think the players know, and even we know, it's just not a major yet. It's exciting to watch. I root for the players. And so, yeah, it kind of feels like it, but then it's going to fade right in our memories quickly.
I think you made a lot of great points there. Dion, you can react to those, but I'm also curious, what do you think the future of this event is? What do you want it to be? Or maybe what do you think the plan is for it?
Sure. So StatMando quantifies strength of field, and that's something you can see on our website if you go to the rankings section. And last year in 2021, only one event had a higher strength of field than the ThrowPink Championships, and that was the World Championships. So this was the second most impressive field in 2021 for the FPO division, and we expect to see comparable numbers in 2022 as well. So whether or not the players think it's a major championship, or the media, or the letter next to your name, this is a win you want to get. Pays well, and it proves that you are a top player. So it means a lot to the players.
Okay, it means a lot to the players.
Yeah, so I do have a reaction to that because this has actually been an interesting discussion this year. And so we're not going to deep dive now. I'm just going to plant the seed. We've been hearing a lot about strength of field. Ricky's actually been talking a lot about this, about his performance over the year, which his performance was incredible. And, Dion, you just talked about strength of field, and that's awesome to hear. But there's kind of another immeasurable factor, which to me actually means a whole lot, which is, and so I'm kind of coining this here, but it's the strength of motivation. How do the players view it? And, do they take it seriously enough? Right. So in other words, this was discussed the World Championships versus the Pro Tour Championships. I'm kind of picking that right randomly, but do the players, do they prepare as hard? Do they go in as hard? Is the pressure at the same level? And are they motivated to win? And I just feel like on a scale of 1 to 10, World Championships is probably rated at a 10. Everybody's gunning at it full motivation, and I feel like ThrowPink is going to come in somewhere at an 8 or 9. Of course they want to win, and the players themselves are the best of the best, but I don't think it means the same, and so the motivation is a notch or two down, and that's just a subjective opinion on my part, but that's how I feel.
Yeah, and this is the last opportunity. It's quasi last. I mean, we have the finale if you've made it into that, but this is the last opportunity for many of these women to make a point about their season. And so I think it could be ranked that high, Josh, maybe higher for some of them if this is their last chance. So the future of the event is unknown, but I know ThrowPink, the organization, is out there to continue to push forward with women's disc golf. I would imagine this will stick around. I think I heard next year it might be pushed a few weeks later following the United States Disc Golf Championship. All right, let's get into it. As we get closer to wrapping up the segment today, ThrowPink, who are we having our top 5? I'm going to go ahead and knock 2 out of there, and you guys have to pick someone else. Tatar and Pierce are off the table. They're in everybody's top 5. Who else do you have, Dion?
I'm going to watch Valerie Mandujano. I think this type of course suits her game well, so I'm expecting her to hit landing zones and make putts. And who did you take off the table?
Tatar and Pierce.
Okay, Owen Scoggins. I'd watch her every tournament for the rest of my life because that's the most entertaining player of all time.
Yeah, that's great. And Josh, go ahead. Give me your others.
All right. So how do we leave Missy Gannon off the list? So she's got to be there defending. And then I'm going to pick somebody, again, maybe it's hopeful, but unbelievable, incredible throwing talent. And I just keep waiting for the putting to show up. And so I'm picking Evelina Salonen. I mean, if she can just somehow get that piece together, I think we'd be blown away with the performance. So maybe it's a risk, but I'm putting her out there.
I don't think it's an accident, and it's obviously unfortunate for this player, but Katrina Allen does not make any of our top fives. That should be notable. I would say in my top five that was missed was Henna Blumroos. She had an extremely good season, at least towards the latter part here, and I would like to say that maybe what happened to Missy Gannon last year is happening for Henna this year. If she pulls off this win, that'd be a really spectacular win for her. And then finally, Natalie Ryan coming out of the MVP Open. Potential here. We'll see how it goes, but that's our top five for ThrowPink, everybody. Other news as we move into our next segment is the 2023 tour schedule has been released by the Disc Golf Pro Tour, which is the official tour of the PDGA. So we see both your Elite Series, we see the majors on there, including Worlds. We see some events moving to Canada, Prince Edward's Island. We also see events in Europe. Pro Tour events, and one other event that's notably changed up. We saw the playoffs recently. The Green Mountain Championship hosted the first round of the playoffs. That has been moved to the Discraft Great Lakes Open, and because GMC Smuggler's Notch is hosting Worlds, Pro Open Worlds. So what do you guys see in the schedule as a, I think, Ben, you can put that up for us. Perfect. What stands out to you, Josh or Dion?
Just in general, I think the European swing becomes a little more valuable now that PCS is a regular elite event. And then followed up by the European Open, which, by the way, it's great to see that again because that has not been always an annual event. And you already talked about the playoff change and then the addition of a new tier, which is Elite Plus, where we're going to see 4 rounds, which we've seen at some events this year, but kind of formally classifying them with, I think, higher payouts and probably more intentional media. And so it's exciting to see that. Obviously, there's always going to be debates around, is the East or West Coast, properly represented? Is the flow of the event? I think the schedule still shows there are challenges in some competing priorities across organizations for making a perfectly flowing event. But I also think logistics are hard, and this is quite impressive to how the sport's grown. Overall, I'm pretty satisfied with what I'm seeing. There's some awesome events there. There are some drops and some new, but it looks like it's going to be an incredible year. And I can't believe we're already talking about next year's schedule, but it's awesome.
Any thoughts, Dion, on the tour schedule?
Yeah, if Jeff Spring's whole point of the schedule was to motivate me to get more West Coast events suitable for the Elite Series, then he has accomplished his task. There's more international tournaments than there are tournaments on this side of the Rockies, so I'm going to go ahead and break a League Night exclusive here. 2025, look out for the Statmando Open somewhere in Washington State, because I'm getting something on the freaking schedule as an elite event that I can drive to and compete in myself.
Awesome. Statman.
I love it. Yeah, I know. It makes you
sponsoring.
Yeah, I mean, is there any disc golf history like in California? Are there any disc golfers there, Dion? Like, I imagine there must be.
There might be a few. Hard to
but
say.
Everybody, bear with my sarcasm because I'm on the East Coast. But the truth is, it is intriguing, and I'm sure the Pro Tour would love to expand events, but there's lots of factors. So, Dion, motivation, having events willing to run it. We're going to continue to see this evolve over the years, but it's great to see how it's taking those steps.
Okay, boys, we talked about a lot of things relating to the USDGC ThrowPink Women's Championship and now the tour that's released for 2023. We're going to close it out tonight, and I'm going to say this is what the look ahead was all about. Be sure to check out the USDGC. Looks like, there we go, October 6th through 9th. This is included in your subscription. Be sure to stream it every day. Make the numbers boost up. Let's make this a record event. And let's see who takes it down. Leave your picks in the comments. Leave anything else that you thought maybe we missed out or something that you agree or disagree with us on. But until next time, go out there, throw your disc, find somebody to do it with, have a good time. Maybe attend the USDGC if you're in that area. All right. I don't know who's going to win it, but I'm excited. Let's get to it. See you out there, everybody. Yep.
Cheers.
Bye.